doing? Thanks, Lola. How is everybody doing? I just wanted to say thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to join you today and bring to you our view and our kind of experience working in AI in the market, not just obviously with private and public sector, but we were looking at it too from a charity sector and a charitable lens on things. So it's given us some time to share our views with you, and we hope that from this session that we create some thought-provoking questions that we make you kind of, I suppose, walk away with looking at how you can leverage the power of AI in your organizations to really solve some of the challenges you're having. Doing it at a small scale and a scale that will really create quick wins and quick value for yourself. I just wanted to note as well that it's really important for us to contribute to the session today because it gives us an opportunity to give back to the community and the wider society that we work with and that we live in. So I just wanted to start with that. So thank you so much. It's great as well to see the various organizations, and I think it's over 100 organizations registered to attend today to the session. And we can see there's such a diverse group of people, whether it's CEOs, HR managers, IT managers, project marketing specialists and SMEs. And that's huge, kind of hugely exciting for us to be able to share our views with all of you and to understand, I suppose, key challenges in the Q&A of what you're experiencing in the market. I know that Chloe introduced me, but just to give you just a kind of high level, my name is Nisa Cloney. I work in the artificial intelligence team here in data team in Deloitte since 2020. I joined during COVID, so did Donal. And from the last, I suppose, 10 years, I've been working significantly with data, looking at data analytics. I've been looking at data strategy and how you support organizations with their data management, along with data regulation from a financial services perspective, for example. But obviously in the last kind of 2 to 3 years, we've had a huge change in our market and our clients are looking towards leveraging AI. In particular, the tidal wave that came in early 2023 or the end of 2022 with large language models and generative AI, we've seen a real shift in what our clients are looking for us to support them with and how they're asking us to kind of help them with an AI strategy and help them throughout their organizations identify really useful use cases so that they can introduce AI and solve problems with AI. So that's myself. Donal, over to you. Do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Nisa. Hi, all. So Donal Lynch is my name, and I'm also in the AI and data team here in Deloitte. I joined the week we all got sent home from work due to COVID, so that's been my experience in Deloitte. And my experience, I was actually, prior to joining Deloitte, I was a statistician, so I've got an experience in a lot of statistics and maths background, but I suppose lately, especially with the emergence of AI, my analytics has drifted into AI, and I've learned more and more about that area. Thanks.
Thanks, Donal. I just wanted to as well say that our webinar will focus on artificial intelligence and the key facets of AI and the opportunities to leverage AI to create efficiencies at work. But we also want to discuss the implications and the ethics around AI, as well as walk through some key examples that we think will relate to the charity sector from the research we've done. And hopefully those demos and demonstrations that we're going to bring you through will resonate in some way and provide food for thought, as I mentioned earlier. The other thing I just wanted to note was that in the last few weeks, we've done some research in the charity sector, and myself and Donal have noted from people we've spoken to, as well as just research, that there seems to be a key challenge from terms of, funding, getting access to funding, submitting applications for funding, to understanding how else they can kind of find maybe funding for digital capability within your organizations, or even just dealing with the administrative burden to completing those applications, or looking at internal communications or internal campaigns or external campaigns, as well as working collaboratively across different charities. So we've kind of taken all of those kind of key pieces of information as we walk through today's session, and hopefully that will help you going forward. Great as well if you have any other information that you want to share to help us kind of think outside of those initial pieces of research that we identified. I think let's jump into the slides. I think it'd be great if we can get somebody to, yeah. So I suppose the question we're all very familiar with artificial intelligence. It's not new. It's in our daily lives for decades now. I mean, computer recognition, using our phones, predicting what we want to watch on TV. All of that is just a part of our day-to-day life. When we talk to Siri, for example, in our kitchens, we're using Alexa. This isn't new. I suppose in front of you, I've just put a timeline to give you kind of a bit of a historical background about where AI has come from. I mean, some people would feel that in 1840, when Ava Lovelace said that machines have the power to potentially do what humans can do, that's where AI started. But we can say, you know, for certainty that in 1957, 1956, I should say, artificial intelligence was a field that emerged in computer science. And it was really the study of how computers can be developed to complete activities that mimic human behavior, that display the cognitive skills of a human at scale as well as at speed. And that rapid speed and scale is something that's really important right now as we work with organizations. Of course, when we say AI mimics the intelligent humans and the humans' behavior, we do not suggest, or we never suggest, that it will replicate or replace humans. In fact, super AI intelligence, those computers that have the sophistication and superior levels to replicate human beings and who are fully in control of their own existence, those themselves have never been intended to eliminate the workforce. So I suppose as we move through the next 2 to 3 years, we're really going to see how AI is going to shape the human workforce and how it's going to give us opportunity to leverage our skills in the way we work and the way we do business. I think let's move on. I think what's important as well is that we look at from leaders in the organization. So when we think of Netflix, Spotify, the king of personalization, they've really used artificial intelligence to their advantage so that they can understand how they can enhance human experience or customer experience, how they can become leaders in the market, and how they can drive significant cost efficiencies and make huge revenue gains from AI. I think that's kind of just as a high level to understand where artificial intelligence is in the leading areas of the market. But more and more organizations are really looking to see how can we adopt AI at our level and develop it for our use cases that are often back office activities that we're seeing at the moment. So back to artificial intelligence. In 1997, artificial intelligence had a subset, which many people on the call are probably very familiar with, known as machine learning. And of course, machine learning enables machines to learn from existing data and improve upon that data to make decisions and predictions. And we're seeing with many of our clients, a lot of our work that we do is fundamentally around the areas of machine learning and deep learning. Deep learning, again, is another subset of machine learning that we've seen since 2017, which is, you know, it's kind of a unique element of machine learning where there's layers of neural networks that are used to process data and make decisions. And when I say neural networks, what I really mean are models that analyze the patterns in the data to make predictions and decisions and classifications. I suppose many people would potentially say that, you know, neural networks are like almost like algorithms that mimic the structure of our human brain. I think just to kind of step into this is what we've seen in the last few months is generative AI. And just continuing to the next slide, you know, it's a subset of artificial intelligence and one that we're seeing huge change because people are able to access it more. There's so much open source availability and organizations can leverage it, as well as so many people in society are just using it for their day-to-day activities, whether that's somebody creating a storybook with their child online using ChatGPT or using it in imagery creation. So we're seeing a complete change in the market. And I suppose there's a number of facets of artificial intelligence that we can talk about here today that show the broad capability of AI and how it can actually can support challenges in society. and challenges that our business are experiencing. But I suppose two areas that we did want to just reflect on today, and that's predictive analytics, which is, I suppose, it's really about how we use historical data and statistical algorithms and machine learning techniques to identify the likelihood of future outcomes based on patterns and trends. And when I talk about that, I was thinking a lot about how we could use that when we think of churn, when we think of in the charity sector, the potential likelihood of a donor to churn, and then maybe with that identification, charity sectors might increase their interactions, whether that's calling or connecting or sending campaigns or to those identified potential churn donors to increase their activity to build back that relationship and try and maintain and prevent losing the donor. So that was just one example. Another one I wanted to just call out today as well is natural language processing. Again, this focuses on enabling computers to understand, interpret and generate human language. And that again is a very good case potentially for where you have chatbots or you're looking at social media sentiment. And one that comes to mind for me is when I look at RTE, for example, and I see charities advertising their, what their work and where they need funding, and they're asking the public to support the charities. And one thing I think that we can use AI in here is to understand the sentiment of those ads and see how people are reacting to them, so that then where there's success, you can drive similar campaigns going forward, and maybe where there's not as much success, maybe to take lessons learned and take that away and kind of say, okay, what can we do from a marketing campaign to do a better, have a better presence and get more for our expense and our costs. So that was just two areas I wanted to have a look at. Just to bring it down a little bit and to get less into the business side of things, I just thought this is an interesting example of how far artificial intelligence, and in particular generative AI, has come in the recent months. And when I say months, I mean 18, 24 months as well. There's been a lot of talk about this girl. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with the girl with the pearl earring. And the lady with the pearl earring is a 1665 painting by a Dutch artist called Vermeer. And in February of this year, the Vermeer had a once-in-a-lifetime exhibition where all of his paintings were brought to a central museum. And with that, the Hague Museum lost their girl with a pearl earring painting for a number of months. In reaction, the museum decided, and the Hague Museum decided to release a campaign or a competition and asked the general public to create a replacement picture of any kind or shape to replace for those months while the girl in the pearl earring was no longer in their museum. A lot of entries, I think it was about 3,500 entries that came in, and there was a final winner. The winner, which we're just going to display now, was known as the girl with the glowing earring. Of course, this caused significant, I suppose, noise in the media and in critics, because they were quite upset about the fact that the winner was actually a Gen AI program created image by Midjourney, and the artist who submitted it, Van Deeken, was very much challenged on: is it art? Is it art if you are being replacing it, human's artist piece of work with AI? Of course, I think myself personally, there's a lot of beauty in it. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's just one word to note. It's showing us though too also the capability of AI and where the generative AI has come from and how realistic it is actually becoming. I think let's move into looking a little bit more at what generative AI is. I'm sure many people on the call know at this stage that it's artificial intelligence that creates original content across various modalities. So the example I gave you a moment ago with image or text or audio or code, in order to, I suppose, take human skills and expertise and create it from a computer experience. We have a number of generative AI large language models on the market. Many of you are familiar, for example, ChatGPT. And we also have Google's Palm, this Bard, as well as NVIDIA's Megatron. So there's a lot on the market at the moment that people are very familiar with. There's obviously Camel AI, which is an open source one as well. So there's a huge amount that people can use. But just to, I suppose, understand why it's been so adopted so well, I suppose, not just because big techs are building it, but startups then are able to use that technology so that they can actually, leverage the language models to build new applications. And finally, then companies are actually really starting to adopt it because they can see cost efficiencies and opportunities to grow by using generative AI. Another thing, just I suppose, is worth notice that there's marginal cost of producing initial versions of content, for example. So if you look at it from a marketing perspective and you're creating marketing content, again, it's really, really interesting that you can do that at a very low cost and then replicate it and roll it out across your whole marketing campaign, which again is probably quite useful in the charity sector area. Just to rapidly run through it, what is Gen AI? I suppose it's a really quick example. If we think of it from a child's perspective, so if we take an infant, generative AI basically is like an infant. You start to teach it how to talk, and like all infants or first learners, they're encouraged by the patterns of the people they're around, or in the case of generative AI, it's learning from the information that it's capturing from the web and the data that it's sourcing. In the case of a child, it's learning from the parents, and of course, many times it will be auto-corrected by the parents to use the words correctly, or to walk, to talk, to do activities in a particular way. Generative AI in the same way as a constant repetitive loop where the information is captured to recorrect any mistakes, and it gets better and better over time the more that the feedback loop is maintained. It's become very, very smart in identifying solutions very quickly because of the size and the scale of the data that it's learning from. Of course, it is worth noting, like humans, it does take the element of judgment and how we need to be aware that our AI solutions are not at the sophistication that they can make the judgments the same way as the infant can, as the infant grows into maturity. So we haven't gone that far on the road, but it's definitely something similar in terms of how it uses the feedback loops to become even more accurate and to be able to make better decisions each and every time that feedback loop occurs. I think ChatGPT is just one of the large language models, as I noted a moment ago. It's also got Bard, we've got Meta with Llama. I mentioned obviously open source Camel AI, and then Amazon has their Bedrock solutions as well. So there's a lot in the market at the moment. I suppose at this stage, I think it's just worth noting that with this comes the whole element of bias and the implications of Gen AI as well as the benefits. So I think we'll just move into the next slide. So just to call out some key benefits very, very quickly, because I'm conscious that we'll probably some time. But just to call out, as we see organizations, Donal and I, that we're working with from time to time, where the organizations are maturing, these organizations are using AI for summarization, documentation interaction, description, search, queries. They're also using it to kind of as a first draft starter position, how to write an email, how to construct an application, how to leverage information from a variety of unstructured and structured data, bringing it in, and then building a solution or a document solution to potentially to an application process. So we're seeing that as these organizations are looking for it to speed up the process. And in some cases, we've seen with banks, for example, or some organizations, they're using it as well as banks to onboard customers faster, or potentially in the charity sector to onboard donor and funding faster. So there's definitely a lot being carried out in the area where organizations are at the very start or at the early stages of their maturing journey. As we see organizations merging, strong, more developed organizations have a better view of their AI strategy and adopting AI strategy. They're looking to image recognition, image generation, text generation, and basically customer marketing in such a way that they can identify customer bases to drive additional insights, and basically personalize video campaigns or ad campaigns to adapt to the customer that they're sharing it with. So we've done some work recently in our organization with a sportswear clothing company, where they've actually adapted their marketing, advertisement, and image generation so that it will apply to different types of customers across different geographies in Europe. by the subtleties of just using AI. Now, while we could always do that, it's just AI and generative AI have been enabled it to do it faster and to do it more efficiently from a cost perspective. I think we see as well, just in really large organizations that are in that emerging area, they're looking at it from a customer service and a business operations perspective and creating efficiencies there. Whereas if you look at leading organizations, to go back to my example from Netflix or Spotify earlier, those organizations are promising organizations are really using it to hyper-personalization for the customer experience. So when we we use Spotify, it's telling me what to listen to. It's telling me what type of genres I'm going to be liking based on the fact of what I've listened to before. And it's also providing new artists to me so that I can kind of even know about them before I'm even aware of them. So it's kind of planting the seed for me. And it's doing that all on the basis of what they think I like and what I expect to see. So hyper-personalization is very much at the kind of the very other side of the journey of maturity curve when we look at organizations that are really adopting and leaders in AI. We are also seeing governments and NGOs leveraging it from the perspective of improving their decision-making, improving process efficiency, whether that's back office activities that I touched on earlier, regarding documentation summarization, developing templates, applications, triaging some of the support required queries that come in from different parts of their customers or different parts of general society looking for solutions or help with different cases. And we'll bring you through one of those shortly. One of the cases that Dawn has is in particular is with one of our leading government clients who has used that so that they could triage and support their customers, get to the bottom of some of the questions and queries they had. I think just to call out very briefly as well, like while we talk about the benefits, it is really important that we recognize that while it's shaping the future of our workforce, it's also going to benefit our workforce significantly because there's going to be greater satisfaction in job roles. There is a lot of the difficult administrative and maybe onerous processes are going to be reduced by using AI and generative AI to support our team. We're seeing that while thousands and thousands of jobs potentially may be lost in the future, we also can see artificial intelligence and AI actually start creating new jobs and new roles that did not currently exist up to now. So and there's a variety of those, we can discuss those in the Q&A, but I do think it's important to identify that job creation and job satisfaction is going to come with as a benefit for AI. I think as well, it's worth noting there's significant limitations with artificial intelligence. Bias is one that we really need to be careful of. And I think everyone who works with organizations of direct customers has to be aware that these models are trained on huge data sets. They're from the internet and they don't always reflect the truth. They can make decisions and prejudices that are against our normal, society's norms. So we do need to be careful of how we interact with these technologies and use those technologies, especially in the case of, when we look at how charities will be ensured that there's transparency, when we think about accountability, and we think about bring back that accountability to the people who provided funds for execution of activities. It's making sure that the language models that we use and the information we use is accurate so that we can be transparent in that. Data management is another area. Like there's a lot that we need to be careful of with the ever-changing landscape from a regulatory perspective for AI technology. As we all know, the EU AI Act is due to come out. It's likely to be passed in Q1 of 2024. And it's really important, I suppose, there's obligations on us all to put in significant measures and adopting frameworks to ensure that we are back again to the point of being transparent, to have traceability on those decisions that we're making, and to really provide really key information back to regulatory so that they understand how and we're using it, how we're using the technology, and having that explainability of AI. Dawn's probably going to take us through some more areas of trustworthy AI. So over to you, Dawn.
Thanks, Nisa. Hi all. And just to remind everyone, first of all, that do put questions in the comments or in the Q&A there as they come up. So yeah, look, I think Lisa's covered a lot of this. the regulatory compliance, I think this slide is really to show that there's a lot of risks. I think we're aware of the risks and probably nervous about them, but there are frameworks out there to help you address them. So this is an example. It's the Deloitte Trustworthy AI framework. But the point is, it's a systematic approach to addressing the risks, identifying them, and mitigating against them. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I think some of the key ones are privacy. We're all aware of privacy is important, and some of the things you can do are use minimal data for each use case as an example for how you protect against privacy. Equivalently, so transparent and explainable models where they're necessary. Look, there's lots of solutions for how you do that. Maybe it's your choice of model is what affects your explainableness. And as well, as Nisa touched on, there's a regulatory element to this whole thing in terms of the AI Act is forthcoming, which will force people to really assess their models, really think about the risk. It's a risk-based approach, so to categorize their own models in terms of risk and what that means. So there's some risks that are totally unacceptable. I think social scoring is an example of something that there's no mitigations. It's just an unacceptably high risk. But there's other models that might be for legal advice or how you deal with employees' rights or things like that they're high risk, but they're acceptable as long as the proper process is followed. Okay, look, I think we can keep going there. So I'm going to go into now to a few examples and a few use cases and a demo as well, actually. So first of all, I think it is fundraising segmentation. So this is a use case that's hopefully quite relevant for this sector. It's something we see a lot in our private and commercial clients, and the idea of segmenting customers, I suppose, in the commercial setting. I'm sure it's familiar to most people on this call, the idea of segmenting donors especially, and the idea is that you pool people with similar characteristics together with the hope that they all behave in a similar way. So you can have targeted campaigns, for example, for similar groups or interventions at risk of churn. So although that's probably quite familiar to most people, I think what's new is what AI can bring to this and what analytics can bring to this to take it up a level. So the first thing is probably that it can look for much deeper characteristics, much more facets to these groups, much more complicated groups by all sorts of different links that are very difficult to spot with a more traditional analytics approach. And then the other thing that AI can do is use non-traditional data. So whereas before you're probably relying on the CRM and kind of the structured data that relates to each donor and each individual. But the advantage of AI is using unstructured data. So there could be things like notes from a call or emails that a particular person sent. And all of those can also be used to build a bigger, more complicated picture of somebody that can help then, segment them and act accordingly. Ultimately, with the bottom line to try and, retain donors and increase as much as possible. So there's so many examples that we see that's quite directly applicable across from the commercial consumers that we see. Another example that I'm sure is familiar to most people on this call is things like Gen AI for marketing content, movies and ads, even stuff like that being created, and the cost savings associated with tailoring market campaigns, generating new material. The ideation phase can be really sped up with Gen AI. So look, that's an example. I'll show you now a demo of some cases we're working on. So if you want to go on to the next slide for 1 second there. So we have a proof of concept with some, and I'll call it some of the demo parts. It's document summary and search. So I'll maybe talk through a little bit about the document summary while Connell, if you want to, you can present the demo. Thanks. So the idea of these demos is really to showcase some of the Gen AI's capability, but particularly where it's relevant to solving common business problems that we're seeing again and again. So document search is useful. The idea is, we all can search, maybe find, replace, and Google things, but it's really document search is really targeted searching of a specific document. It's especially useful as a sort of a research or policy arm, or there's thought leadership where you might need to review a lot of documents. very quickly, and especially, you know, if you're dealing with documents from overseas as well, it can translate. So all sorts of features like that. So Conal, if you want to load in, we've got a youth homelessness strategy. So this is a government document. It's a PDF, 100 and something pages long, and we've done nothing here other than literally just download it. So the point is that this model here can download it, ingest it, and now we can ask questions of the document. So if you want to paste that in to provide a summary of the document, it's a live demo now, so we'll see what we get. So look, as you can see, and maybe many people are familiar with this document already, they can validate it, but it's read that document and now summarized it into a short paragraph there. And it's not just summarizing. So maybe I don't know if you want to ask another question there, Conal, in terms of how can the supply of houses or how can homelessness be reduced based on the document? How does the policy address a specific point? So look, I think that hopefully, especially for anyone who deals in a lot of documentation, policy, that kind of stuff, this is really obvious how you can quickly query and cycle through things. I don't think this is supposed to be a replacement for sort of detailed research. It's really an aid to speed things up, especially if you've got a library of things, you know, if you've been reading them to pull out what you're looking for quite quickly. But look, if people want to take a minute there, they can read that and see that it does, you know, we've answered the question. So that's one demo we have of a tool essentially to leverage this technology. The second one is for a call center application. So and I know for many people on this call center is probably on the donor side, but also on the, you know, it's a key touch point for the service users. So from our experience with customers with call centers, one thing that comes up is the amount of time it takes at the end of a call to write up notes. So some customers say it takes up to 5 minutes of agent time after a call to summarize it. In addition, the agents often, you know, don't enjoy this work. It's kind of seen as admin. It's boring, and in a busy call center, it can be quite stressful trying to do that as quickly as possible while also, you know, trying to get onto the next call. So the idea here is to leverage technology to sort of make that easier from the agent's point of view. So for this demo, what we have is we've just gone to ChatGPT and we've got a script. Maybe you can pull it up for a second, Conal. We've asked ChatGPT to write us a script of an example call between a donor and a charity, an NGO. The call in summary is that the donor calls up and asks about cancelling his donation, and the agent suggests a lower donation, which the donor agrees to. So look, that's it. It's straight out of ChatGPT, and then we can show what would happen if this happened in a call center setting. I suppose this is to say that, you know, we also do have a separate app for transcribing calls. That will be the first part of this, but just that we haven't got an audio for this call. So Conal, if you want to load it in and run it there. Okay, so I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, it summarized the call, and the idea of that is to reduce the burden on the agents. It's you know, a piece of work that keeps them busy, that they don't necessarily enjoy doing, and it summarizes it. But there's other things here, and this is sort of, not only is it sort of automating a process, but it's actually adding more value. So it categorizes the call there on the top, and it pulls out some sentiment details. So the idea here is that not only are we getting the summary, which is important for note keeping, adding some of these other fields will be there so we can overlay analytics on them. So if you think that, you know, as your call center, you build up more and more of these features, and they can be expanded as well. The idea is that you can improve operational efficiency, you know, improve your effectiveness of your call center by overlaying analytics on all this summary data from your calls. So it's continuous process improvement, as well as the sort of the instant process improvement of automating the repetitive work. That makes sense. So thanks for that, Conal, and Sue, if you want to pop up the slides again. So those two examples are examples of pieces of AI technology, but they don't really reflect, I suppose, overall what people want out of AI. They're good showcases of technology, but really what a client generally wants, or what an organization generally wants, is to solve a problem. So this last example is an example of how AI fits into a broader solution, because people don't want AI for AI's sake. They want to solve their problems. The Okay, so this is a situation at Revenue, the Revenue Commissioners in Ireland. The original challenge was for either an individual or a business, if they wanted to lodge a query with Revenue, they had to navigate a reasonably complex set of drop-down boxes to try and route their query to the appropriate team. In reality, it actually took quite a detailed understanding of sort of tax codes to do that. So what very commonly happened was the query didn't go to the right team, and then there was burden on the revenue side, routing it to the right team, and a delay for the user. So overall, there was a bit of pain on both sides. The solution from the Deloitte perspective, the solution Deloitte were brought in to support and develop, was an NLP model. So although there's still the boxes, there's now a free text box at the bottom, and you describe in plain English, describe your issue, describe what your problem is. That the model, then the AI in the background, takes that, looks at all the previous questions that have been asked, and routes it to the correct team. And I think probably the key step here is that it's not just an AI model that routes it. It's also all the infrastructure around it that then looks at that recommendation out of the model. It sends the query to the right team. It might be that there's it's a frequently asked question, so it can send helpful information back to the user. But it's the supporting whole tech infrastructure, but the AI is at the heart of it. As a result, the time wasted on both sides is dramatically reduced. In some cases, there's an email can solve, an automatic email can solve the issue. Otherwise, the question goes to the right team much more quickly, which just cuts down the delay from the service user, and also the sort of the admin on the team side. So look, that's an example of a solution. But then I think, what's next? How does an organization deliver something like that? And I think there's a lot to it. There's an awful lot to it. But it's not just a technology thing, is the point here. So, if an organization wants to start down the AI route and start thinking about, implementing their own AI solutions, first of all, there's 5 pillars you have to think about. It's not, and I think a lot of people are quite quick to think about the technology, but you have to have a strategy. Undoubtedly, there's already an organization strategy. So how does your AI use and your AI plan fit into that strategy? They have to be aligned. You need the right people. I think there's a couple of elements to the right people. You need sort of the people with the hard technical skills who can implement and deliver things, but you also need people, leaders and champions at all levels, to make sure it's being championed at the right level. Processes, a little bit, it does link back to the strategy, but you have to make sure processes are in place so that the right people are working on the right things. You also need processes to manage risk. It's not just about letting people go and do whatever they want or whatever's interesting. It's about a process that it's overall in alignment with what the organization wants. You need good quality, well curated data, fit for purpose. And finally, technology. You need the right technology to do these kind of things. But that's only one pillar of an overall holistic platform and approach you need to take to developing AI. So look, within each of these pillars, there's an awful lot that could be gone into, but I think that's just a primer to say it's not just a technology issue. It's a whole organization issue. And Nisa, I think if you want to maybe bring that to life a bit more about what next and where to get started from.
Yeah, I suppose it's just worth noting, Donal, you mentioned it indirectly there a few times, just calling out to everybody here on the call. Like, our organizations that we work with do not, they don't request AI solutions from us. Frequently, we're working with our organizations, helping them to solve or trying to help them solve a problem, a business challenge. And actually, AI is part of that solution. It's not something that we go in with a solution and it is AI at the beginning. They're not looking for an AI solution at the start. The example of the revenue email triage and customer triage is a really clear example of that one. We went in to try them help with the business problem, and we found a very efficient way of dealing with that. So that's just one thing I wanted to note. I suppose that's good for you to take into mind as well when you're looking at your own organization and thinking, rather than what can AI solve for me, it's maybe starting actually at the bigger picture and looking, what is the business problem I have? And then as part of your solutions, can AI help? So it's looking at it from that direction. It's also important, I suppose, as you embark on your AI journey to really consider your AI strategy, to identify or define an AI strategy and agree it. And again, Donal mentioned something really important is about having champions within your organization to champion the AI, the importance of your AI strategy and what you're doing in that space. Because it's when your team are fully involved and on that journey with you that we're seeing organizations most successful. There's really as well, it's beneficial because your team will help you to make that case for change. So whether it's looking at how can we bring in AI solutions maybe to help us with our churn, or how can we solve from a heavy administrative purpose, activities, how can we solve that problem, and how can we use technology or AI to help us? It's that case for change, but at all times, I suppose it's important for the workforce and your teams to recognise in your volunteers that this is to support them and increase their job satisfaction, to increase their efficiencies in their role. And we're not looking to eliminate the human element of any of the roles. I think one key thing as you embark on that journey is to start with very clear and small use cases. Experimenting maybe in particular case studies like campaign or content creation from a charity perspective, taking that use case and experimenting it, learning, relooking at it, and as we've called out here, like building on your experience, developing, reiterating new cases, and really identifying ones that can kind of drive quick wins so that your organization can see very quickly the impact of the solution. At all times, awareness of bias. I can see through the chat a number of people are coming in with questions regarding bias and regulation. It is really a case of awareness of bias. And again, as Donal commented there when he was looking at the element of processes, is understanding how regulation and how the requirements of, like, for example, the AI Act will need us to be in a position to be compliant, and that traceability and transparency is really necessary there as well from an ethical point of view. So it's having AI ethics or trustworthy AI at its core in all of your activities. And finally, being prepared for regulatory changes. We noted that the EU AI Act is likely to come in Q1 of 2024. So there's a lot of work to be preparing for that and to be thinking about, okay, what will this impact? How will this impact on my organization? What will I need to do to reduce or, to mitigate some of the risk for my organization so that I can be ready or AI ready? It is a journey. There's a lot of components, but as we said in the center of the slide here, it's about starting with small use cases and really leveraging the wins from those to continue on your journey as you embark. That's it from me. Donal, do you have any final wrap-up points?
No, I think that summarized it really. I think that, look, I know you put a line under it, but that small use case is getting started is really the key. I think is start small and iterate and learn.
And we've seen that time and time with our organizations. It's about developing an AI strategy and then rolling out the use cases and learning, as you said. Okay. Thanks very much for everybody coming in and with questions. Maybe we can look at some of those questions and answering them.
Yeah, great. So one question in is that given that the EU AI Act has not been passed yet, would it be wise to adopt a kind of a wait and see approach, or what would you advise?
We've been working with our organizations currently to prepare for what has been initially documented. Because their process, while it will take a long time, I suppose, for it to roll out and actually be implemented fully, and they're suggesting 2 to 3 years. before the Act will actually enter in force. But I mean, so there is a bit of opportunity there in that period of time. But I think for everyone to be AI ready, it really is about embedding that process into your organization and the activities of your organization, irrespective of AI acts, because it is so important for bias, misinformation, I suppose, accountability and traceability, to be able to actually have that information ready. So I think while the Act is ensuring it, I think there is a need for organisations to prepare for themselves so they can feel accountable and their activities are traceable. Donal, would you have anything else to add on that one?
No, I think I totally echo your point that probably like a lot of laws, it's reinforcing good behaviour in a lot of ways. It's and I think if people take a little bit of time even to read, the EU actually have some quite good summaries. It's it is doing things that we should be thinking about anyway.
Yeah, I think it comes down to traceability, accountability, really, and making sure that you're prepared for that, because that journey, even though they are in the process of building out the Act, we know a lot of the parameters that will be part of that Act. So I suppose it's getting ready for that and having best practice.
Okay, I think Sue has compiled a number of questions because there's a common theme going through some of the chat there. So I think he was going to put some of those questions out.
Yes, so a common theme that came through on the chat is sort of around data protection, and especially sensitive data, as you can imagine with the sector. So the question was, how can AI be used without sensitive information being leaked? Some of the suggestions on the chat was actually that there are paid services as well by the likes of Microsoft, AWS, and Google. So can you maybe just provide your comments on that, especially around the data protection piece and sensitive information and how that can be managed?
Yeah, I think we do need to be aware, just that as you input data into large language models, these large language models are used and capture more and more data. So, your user data will then be used for the models to be retrained on. So it is really important that, that we don't use confidential data in our discoveries, because it can be used then for sources for other people having similar queries, looking in the same topics in the future. So that is important.
I suppose I'll just expand on that a little bit. So I think like in that answer there are a variety of models that treat it differently, and some do and some don't. But the other really important thing is how you're transferring the data out of your own environment. So even if you find a model, a paid service, like you say, that where it is, they do guarantee privacy, and I think they need to be reviewed on a case by case basis. There's probably a whole system there around making sure you're end to end private with all your data. That's just a key thing to be aware of in everything you do. But certainly anything that's free and kind of open on the internet is unrestricted in every way. So essentially it's probably probably not a great idea for sensitive data.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Another question would be kind of where to start. Let's say you're interested in learning more about AI capabilities, what sources you would recommend, and then maybe similar to that, just to add on, what companies or organizations would be willing or interested to collaborate with NGOs and help them with their technical support and increasing the use of AI.
Where to start, you're in the right place, I think. But look, there's a huge amount of resources online. I suppose and probably tailored towards whatever angle you want, whether it's the business side of AI or the technical side. I think it's probably hard to answer that generally, but there is an enormous amount of stuff on there. I don't know off the top of my head anyone who supports and that kind of stuff. Nisa, you might be able to speak to that.
No, again, from my experience, no, we wouldn't have any view of organisations that directly support NGOs or the charity sector. I do know that like Deloitte is very aware of what we can do to support from a bona fide perspective. So that is something that we have awareness of, and we would always try, where possible, to support organisations. We've obviously a number of organisations through our fundraising and charity events throughout the year that we are aligned very close to. But the wider organisations, from a, whether it's walking through how would you develop an AI strategy, or having a couple of hours session on building out an AI use case or solution, implementing solutions. That's something that we would always have considered and as part of our everyday kind of strategy when we look at it for a society perspective and impacting society. But as actual technology that supported, we wouldn't have that familiarity with technology or alliance platforms. We would have a number of alliances, for example, with AWS or with Snowflake or Google. But again, I'm not sure if they have a particular view on NGOs and how they support the charity sector itself. Is there anything else, Stefan?
There's just another question that came in now. If there's a risk of profiling in the use of AI-powered fundraising segmentations, since individuals will then be categorized based on their characteristics or demographics or behavior. I think that's also one that comes up a lot in data work or in machine learning in general.
I think I'm going to leave that to you, Donald, because you're the customer segmentation expert.
Look, I think, and probably this is back to the regulation side as well. It depends on the risk. I think that's really what you think about. So profiling, it is a big difference between what the purpose of the model is doing, and I think that's probably the key. If it's, I suppose where we'd see it, where it's, trying to retain someone on maybe a policy in a commercial sector, actually the risk is low in terms of the person's rights being infringed, which is all about what the AI Act is about. But I think how it's used is really important to be mindful of, and I think all these models need to be approached through that sort of a framework of trustworthiness, if that makes sense. So I think hard to say categorically, but it's really about what the impact on the person will be being profiled.
That's great. Thank you. I think you've covered the general questions from the chat. I don't know if you have anything else, Clodagh.
Thank you. Thanks, Stefan. I know that there may be questions with people on the call that will kind of come at a later stage, maybe over the next few days, when you think of some of the information we've shared today. Through Clodagh and our social impact leads, feel free to connect with us and let us know if you have any further questions, or you want to kind of, I suppose, tease out further some of the points that we made, or to clarify any of those details that we provided earlier on in our pack. But otherwise, I think just to be aware that, it is a new journey that lots of organizations with maybe less budget and resource and workforce challenges are experiencing. So like for charitable organizations where funding is difficult, where headcount is difficult, and when you're trying to maintain support from volunteers as well as full-time workforce, it is a difficult journey, but it is possible. And we have seen organizations who are really starting their journey and have made significant gains quite quickly. So do, I suppose, take that in mind. And it is a new journey for a lot of organizations. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but equally there's a lot of new changes taking place. Again, if you have any questions, please come back to Donald and I directly, or use the social impact leads, and we will happily jump on a call and have a conversation with you.
Right. Thanks so much, Nisa and Donald and the team. Really appreciate that. That was really insightful. And the email that everybody received, the Zoom invite for today, should have the email address if you want to contact us with questions, and we'll make sure that the team get it. And as I said at the start, in case anybody missed it, the recording and the slides will be made available next week through Business in the Community. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Clodagh, for the opportunity. Thanks to everybody for letting us meet you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Take care.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Thanks to all the attendees. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a million. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.